They have built the perfect trap. Not bars of iron or walls of stone, but something far more insidious. A world so filled with glittering distractions, so saturated with urgent demands for your attention, so dense with apparently important affairs that most people spend their entire lives chasing shadows while their authentic power remains forever undeveloped. Worldly affairs are not naturally occurring phenomena. They are carefully constructed systems designed to capture and redirect human attention away from activities that would develop real capability and toward activities that serve the interests of those who benefit from having populations of distracted, reactive, easily manipulated individuals. Consider the architecture of social media, news cycles, and entertainment systems. These are not randomly evolved cultural phenomena, but deliberately designed attention capture mechanisms that exploit specific psychological vulnerabilities to keep you engaged with content that provides no lasting value, while consuming the mental resources you could direct toward meaningful development. The social media platform triggers your need for social validation through likes, comments, and shares, creating addiction cycles that ensure you return repeatedly to check for approval from people whose opinions have no bearing on your authentic goals. Meanwhile, the time and mental energy you spend managing your online image could be invested in developing capabilities that would make external validation irrelevant. News cycles are structured to create artificial urgency around events that you cannot influence and that will have no meaningful impact on your personal circumstances. You consume hours of information about political conflicts, celebrity scandals, and global crises that generate strong emotional responses while providing no actionable intelligence for improving your own situation. This constant information consumption creates what psychologists call learned helplessness, disguised as informed awareness. You feel knowledgeable about world events while remaining ignorant about the specific factors that determine your personal success. You develop opinions about situations you cannot control while neglecting to develop capabilities that would expand your actual control over your circumstances. The entertainment industry operates on the same attention capture principles, providing increasingly sophisticated forms of stimulation that offer temporary emotional satisfaction while requiring no effort, skill development, or meaningful engagement. Hours spent consuming entertainment are hours not spent developing the capabilities that would make entertainment unnecessary, because your real life would be more engaging than any fictional narrative. Consumer culture creates artificial needs and desires that ensure you remain focused on acquiring external objects rather than developing internal capabilities. The constant bombardment of advertising messages conditions you to believe that happiness, status, and satisfaction can be purchased rather than earned through personal development and authentic achievement. This consumer focus keeps you trapped in cycles of earning money to buy things that provide temporary satisfaction, while the underlying dissatisfaction that drives the purchasing remains unaddressed. Meanwhile, individuals who are not lured by consumer temptations can invest their resources in capability development, strategic positioning, and long-term wealth building. Political engagement, as currently structured, represents perhaps the most sophisticated attention capture system ever devised. It convinces people that following political developments, having strong political opinions, and participating in political debates is civic duty and moral responsibility, while actually functioning to redirect their energy away from areas where they could create meaningful change. The person who spends hours daily following political news, debating political issues, and feeling emotionally invested in political outcomes is investing their mental resources in a domain where they have virtually no influence, while neglecting domains, their career, relationships, health, finances, skill development, where their attention could produce dramatic improvements. Political engagement also creates what we might call moral displacement activity, the illusion that having correct political opinions and expressing political outrage substitutes for the difficult work of actually improving yourself and your circumstances. The politically engaged person feels virtuous about their beliefs while remaining ineffective in their actions. The architecture of distraction also operates through what economists call time preference manipulation, conditioning you to prioritize immediate gratification over long-term benefit through constant exposure to opportunities for instant satisfaction. Every notification, entertainment option, and consumer temptation reinforces the psychological pattern of choosing present pleasure over future advantage. This time preference manipulation prevents the delayed gratification that all meaningful achievement requires. The person who cannot resist immediate distractions cannot sustain the focused effort that building capabilities, creating wealth, or developing expertise demands. They remain trapped in cycles of momentary satisfaction, while their long-term potential remains unrealized. Perhaps most insidiously, the architecture of distraction operates through social proof mechanisms that make distraction feel necessary and resistance feel abnormal. When everyone around you is engaged with the same worldly affairs, avoiding these distractions can feel like missing out, being antisocial, or failing to fulfill social obligations. This social pressure ensures that even people who recognize the futility of most worldly affairs continue participating to maintain their sense of belonging and social acceptance. They sacrifice their authentic development to maintain connections with others who are also sacrificing their development for the same reason. The result is entire social networks organized around shared distraction, mutual time wasting, and collective avoidance of the focused effort that genuine achievement requires. These social networks reinforce each other's limitations, while making those limitations feel natural, normal, and virtuous, rather than recognizing them as systematic barriers to development. The person who is easily lured by worldly affairs reveals through their behavior a fundamental weakness of character, the inability to distinguish between what appears important and what actually matters, between urgent distractions and meaningful priorities, between social pressure and strategic necessity. This weakness makes them perpetually vulnerable to manipulation by anyone who understands how to capture their attention. Watch how the easily lured person responds to social trends. They immediately adopt whatever opinions are currently fashionable, participate in whatever movements are gaining attention, and express outrage about whatever issues are trending in their social circles. Their beliefs and behaviors change based on external stimulation rather than internal conviction, making them predictable and easily controlled. This trend-following behavior reveals that they have never developed independent judgment or authentic values. Instead of evaluating information based on its accuracy and relevance to their personal goals, they evaluate information based on its social acceptability and emotional intensity. They mistake feeling strongly about issues for thinking clearly about them. The easily lured person also demonstrates what psychologists call emotional reactivity, the tendency to make decisions based on temporary emotional states triggered by external events rather than consistent principles and long-term strategic considerations. They change their priorities based on whatever is generating the strongest feelings in the moment. When a news story triggers anger, they suddenly become passionate about political action, When a social media post generates envy, they suddenly need to acquire whatever is being displayed. When an entertainment experience creates excitement, they suddenly want to pursue similar experiences. Their entire life becomes a series of reactions to external stimuli rather than expressions of internal direction. This emotional reactivity prevents the kind of sustained focus that meaningful achievement requires. The easily lured person starts projects based on initial enthusiasm but abandons them when new distractions generate stronger emotional responses. They never develop the consistency and persistence that building capabilities or creating significant results demands. The weakness also manifests as what we might call validation dependency, the psychological need for external confirmation that their attention choices are appropriate and worthwhile. The easily lured person seeks approval for their participation in worldly affairs, wanting others to confirm that their distractions are legitimate concerns rather than time-wasting activities. This validation dependency makes them vulnerable to social manipulation by anyone who can provide the approval they crave. They adopt beliefs and behaviors not because these choices serve their development, but because expressing these beliefs and engaging in these behaviors generates social acceptance from their reference groups. The validation dependency also prevents them from pursuing goals that might generate social disapproval, even when these goals would serve their authentic interests better than socially approved activities. They remain trapped within the boundaries of what their social environment considers acceptable, rather than exploring what their individual nature considers optimal. Another manifestation of weakness is what economists call opportunity cost blindness, the inability to recognize what they're giving up by investing time and attention in worldly affairs. The easily lured person focuses on the immediate satisfaction or social benefit of their distraction activities, while remaining unaware of the much greater long-term benefits they could achieve by directing the same resources toward capability development. They don't calculate that the hours spent following celebrity news could be spent learning valuable skills, that the mental energy invested in political debates could be directed toward business development, that the emotional energy consumed by social dramas could be channeled into creative projects or relationship building that would actually enhance their life quality. This opportunity cost blindness keeps them perpetually poor in time, attention, and results, while feeling busy, engaged, and socially connected. They mistake activity for productivity, stimulation for satisfaction, and social participation for meaningful contribution. The easily lured person also exhibits what we might call crisis addiction, the psychological need for external drama and urgency to feel alive and important. They gravitate towards situations that generate strong emotions and require immediate responses because they've lost the ability to find meaning in steady, consistent progress toward long-term goals. This crisis addiction makes them attracted to relationships filled with drama, work environments with constant emergencies, and social causes that frame everything as urgent moral imperatives. They become psychological adrenaline junkies who cannot function effectively in calm, stable environments that would allow for focused development work. The addiction to crisis also prevents them from creating the stable foundations that significant achievement requires. They cannot build wealth because they spend money impulsively during emotional states. They cannot develop expertise because they abandon learning processes when they become routine rather than exciting. They cannot maintain relationships because they lose interest when relationships become peaceful rather than dramatic. Perhaps most revealing is the easily lured person's inability to tolerate boredom or mental emptiness. They must constantly consume information, entertainment, or social stimulation, because they cannot handle being alone with their thoughts without external distraction. This intolerance for mental quiet prevents the kind of deep thinking and reflection that innovative solutions and creative breakthroughs require. The strong-minded person, by contrast, seeks out periods of mental quiet because they understand that their best thinking occurs when they're not reacting to external stimulation. They use boredom as an opportunity for internal processing, creative thinking and strategic planning, rather than as a problem to be solved through immediate distraction. The weakness of the easily lured ultimately stems from their failure to develop what philosophers call internal locus of control. The understanding that their outcomes are primarily determined by their choices and actions rather than by external circumstances and other people's decisions. Because they believe their satisfaction comes from external sources, they remain forever dependent on external stimulation and forever vulnerable to whoever controls that stimulation. The strong-minded person constructs what can only be called a fortress of mental discipline, a psychological structure so well designed and thoroughly defended that worldly affairs cannot penetrate it without deliberate permission. This fortress is not built from isolation or ignorance, but from strategic selectivity about where attention is invested and why. The foundation of this mental fortress is what ancient philosophers called self-knowledge, clear understanding of your authentic goals, genuine values, and actual priorities, rather than the goals, values, and priorities that social conditioning has taught you to adopt. The strong-minded person has done the difficult work of distinguishing between what they actually want and what they think they should want. This self-knowledge creates an internal compass that enables instant evaluation of any worldly affair. Does this serve my authentic development or distract from it? Does this advance my genuine goals or delay their achievement? Does this align with my actual values or satisfy socially imposed expectations that don't reflect my nature? The person with clear self-knowledge can immediately recognize when worldly affairs are attempting to hijack their attention for purposes that don't serve their interests. They don't need to analyze each distraction individually because they have clear criteria for what deserves their mental investment and what doesn't. The walls of the mental fortress consist of what military strategists call attention allocation protocols, systematic methods for determining where mental resources will be directed and protected from unauthorized access. The strong-minded person treats their attention as their most valuable asset and guards it accordingly. These protocols include designated times for information consumption, specific criteria for what information sources are worthy of attention, and strict limits on how much time can be spent on various categories of worldly affairs. The strong-minded person doesn't randomly consume whatever information is available. They deliberately select information that serves their strategic objectives, while filtering out information that provides no actionable value. The protocols also include what we might call distraction immunity training, systematic exposure to common worldly lures in controlled circumstances to develop resistance to their psychological pull. The strong-minded person deliberately exposes themselves to social media, news, entertainment, and consumer temptations in measured doses to build psychological antibodies against their addictive properties. This immunity training is similar to how vaccines work. Controlled exposure to weakened versions of harmful influences develops natural resistance to those influences. The person who has never been exposed to worldly temptations remains vulnerable when exposed, while the person who has developed immunity through controlled exposure becomes increasingly resistant to manipulation attempts. The watchtowers of the mental fortress consist of what psychologists call metacognitive awareness. the ability to observe your own mental processes and recognize when external influences are attempting to capture your attention or manipulate your emotional responses. The strong-minded person maintains continuous awareness of how their thoughts and feelings are being influenced by external stimuli. This metacognitive awareness enables real-time detection of manipulation attempts. When social media platforms use psychological triggers to encourage extended usage, the strong-minded person recognizes these triggers and can choose whether to respond. When news organizations use emotional manipulation to maintain viewer engagement, the strong-minded person identifies the manipulation and evaluates the actual information content separately from the emotional packaging. The guards of the mental fortress are what could be called strategic questioning protocols, automatic mental responses that evaluate any worldly affair before allowing it access to significant attention. These protocols ask, who benefits from my engagement with this issue? What do I gain from investing mental energy here? How does this advance my authentic objectives? These questioning protocols prevent impulsive engagement with distractions by inserting a strategic evaluation step between stimulus and response. The strong-minded person doesn't react immediately to worldly affairs. They evaluate whether reaction serves their purposes, and if so, what type of reaction would be most strategic. The weapons systems of the fortress include what we might call redirection capabilities, the ability to consciously redirect attention from worldly distractions to productive activities. When distractions attempt to capture focus, the strong-minded person has developed specific techniques for disengaging from unproductive mental activities and re-engaging with meaningful work. These redirection techniques might include physical activities that reset mental focus, meditation practices that restore attention control, or engaging with projects that provide more satisfaction than the distractions being avoided. The key is having reliable methods for returning attention to chosen activities rather than remaining trapped in whatever captures attention most recently. The communication systems of the fortress consist of what could be called selective engagement protocols, sophisticated methods for interacting with worldly affairs when such interaction serves strategic purposes while avoiding unnecessary exposure to their distracting influences. The strong-minded person can engage with social media to maintain valuable relationships without being drawn into endless browsing. They can consume news to stay informed about factors that affect their circumstances without becoming addicted to information consumption. They can participate in social conversations without adopting every opinion or emotional response that their social environment promotes. This selective engagement requires what military personnel call mission discipline, the ability to enter potentially distracting environments for specific purposes and leave when those purposes are accomplished, rather than being drawn into extended engagement that serves no strategic objective. Finally, the power source of the mental fortress is what ancient Stoics called internal validation, the psychological independence that comes from deriving satisfaction, meaning, and direction from your own development and achievements, rather than from external recognition, social approval, or participation in collective activities. The strong-minded person doesn't need to participate in worldly affairs to feel important, informed, or socially connected, because they derive these feelings from their own progress toward authentic goals. This internal validation makes them immune to the social pressure and FOMO, fear of missing out, that drives most people's engagement with distracting worldly affairs. The ultimate liberation of the strong-minded comes through recognizing that most worldly affairs that consume others' attention are not actually important. They are elaborate illusions of importance designed to make people feel engaged and significant while preventing them from pursuing activities that would develop real power and create lasting value. This recognition requires what we might call importance discrimination, the ability to distinguish between activities that feel important due to social reinforcement and emotional intensity versus activities that actually produce meaningful, long-term consequences for your authentic development and strategic objectives. Consider the psychological mechanisms that make worldly affairs feel important. Political issues are presented as urgent moral imperatives that require your immediate attention and emotional investment. Social trends are framed as cultural movements that you must participate in to remain relevant. Consumer opportunities are positioned as limited time chances that you cannot afford to miss. But examine the actual long-term consequences of engaging with these supposedly important affairs, and you discover that your participation changes nothing significant, while your non-participation costs you nothing valuable. The political outcomes remain the same whether you follow them obsessively or ignore them completely. The social trends continue their natural evolution regardless of your participation. The consumer opportunities are replaced by similar opportunities with predictable regularity. Meanwhile, the time and mental energy you could have invested in developing capabilities, building relationships, creating assets, or pursuing genuine learning opportunities, activities that actually do produce significant, long-term consequences, has been consumed by engagement with illusions of importance that provide no lasting value. The strong-minded person develops what ancient philosophers called cosmic perspective, the ability to evaluate activities based on their significance over extended time periods rather than their immediate emotional impact or social visibility. From this cosmic perspective, most worldly affairs reveal themselves as temporary distractions that will be forgotten within months or years, while having produced no meaningful change in participants' actual capabilities or circumstances. This cosmic perspective doesn't create cynicism or disengagement from all worldly activities. It creates strategic selectivity about which worldly activities actually deserve attention based on their genuine rather than apparent importance. The strong-minded person can distinguish between social movements that might produce meaningful change and social trends that are simply emotional entertainment disguised as activism. The liberation from illusions of importance also requires recognizing what we might call manufactured urgency, the artificial time pressure that makes worldly affairs seem to require immediate attention when they actually require no attention at all. News cycles create artificial deadlines for having opinions about events. Social media creates artificial pressure to respond immediately to posts and messages. Consumer culture creates artificial scarcity that requires immediate purchasing decisions. But examine these urgency claims objectively, and you discover that the supposed consequences of not immediately engaging never actually materialize. The news story that seemed to require your urgent attention is forgotten within days. The social media post that seemed to demand immediate response is buried under new posts within hours. The limited time offer is followed by similar offers with predictable regularity. The strong-minded person recognizes manufactured urgency and refuses to be manipulated by it. They respond to genuine urgency, situations that actually require immediate attention to prevent real negative consequences, while ignoring artificial urgency designed to capture their attention for others' benefit. This urgency discrimination enables what successful people call proactive rather than reactive living, organizing your time and attention around your chosen priorities, rather than around whatever external forces are demanding immediate responses. The strong-minded person sets their own schedule based on their strategic objectives, rather than allowing their schedule to be determined by others' urgency claims. The transcendence of worldly affairs also reveals what could be called the addiction cycle of false importance, the psychological pattern where engaging with apparently important worldly affairs provides temporary feelings of significance and relevance that fade quickly, requiring increased engagement to maintain the same level of psychological satisfaction. The person addicted to political engagement needs increasingly extreme positions and more frequent participation to feel important. The social media user requires more likes, comments, and followers to feel validated. The news consumer needs more dramatic stories and more frequent updates to feel informed. The entertainment consumer needs more intense stimulation to feel satisfied. This addiction cycle ensures that worldly affairs consume increasing amounts of time and attention while providing diminishing psychological returns, exactly like drug addiction patterns. The strong-minded person recognizes this addictive quality and maintains conscious control over their engagement levels to prevent unconscious escalation. Perhaps most importantly, transcending the illusion of importance reveals what we might call authentic significance. The understanding that genuine importance comes from developing your capabilities and contributing value through your unique talents and interests, rather than from participating in collective activities that provide temporary feelings of relevance without creating lasting achievements. Authentic significance emerges from becoming increasingly capable of creating value that others genuinely need and appreciate, from developing expertise that serves real purposes, from building relationships based on mutual respect and benefit, from creating works or achievements that reflect your deepest nature and serve meaningful purposes. This authentic significance provides psychological satisfaction that worldly affairs can never match, because it emerges from your own development rather than from external validation, from your actual achievements rather than from participation in others' achievements, from your genuine contribution rather than from association with apparently important causes or movements. The strong-minded person discovers that authentic significance is always available through focused development of their genuine capabilities, while the significance that comes from worldly affairs is always temporary, dependent on external factors beyond their control, and ultimately hollow because it's based on illusion rather than substance. The strong-minded will not be lured by worldly affairs because they understand that their destiny lies not in reacting to the world as it is, but in becoming powerful enough to create the world as it should be. The choice is yours. The distractions are endless, but your attention, properly guarded and strategically focused, is the key to everything you could become. Choose wisely. The strong-minded will not be lured by worldly affairs because they have something better to do with their attention. They are building themselves into the kind of people who create rather than merely consume, who lead rather than merely follow, who shape circumstances rather than merely react to them. Your mind is the foundation of everything you will ever achieve or become. Guard it accordingly. Focus it strategically. Use it consciously to create the life that reflects your deepest nature, rather than allowing it to be captured by forces that serve everyone's interests except your own. If you choose to continue allowing worldly affairs to determine where your attention flows, understand what you are accepting. You are choosing to remain mentally weak while hoping that weakness will somehow produce strength. You are accepting that your development will be determined by whatever captures your attention most forcefully, rather than by conscious choice about what deserves your mental energy. You are agreeing to live as a reactor to external stimuli, rather than as a creator of your own circumstances. You are embracing the life of someone who is always busy but never productive, always stimulated but never satisfied, always engaged but never truly powerful. But if you choose to develop the mental strength that allows you to remain unlured by worldly affairs, if you commit to becoming someone whose attention cannot be captured without deliberate permission, you are accepting something far more demanding and infinitely more rewarding. You are choosing to discover what you can accomplish when your mental energy is concentrated rather than scattered, when your time is invested strategically rather than reactively consumed, when your emotional resources are directed toward authentic goals rather than artificial concerns. You are embracing the understanding that true power comes not from engaging with everything, but from engaging with the right things, not from being informed about everything, but from being expert at what matters, not from participating in all worldly affairs, but from creating affairs that serve your vision of what the world could become. The strong-minded will not be lured by worldly affairs because they understand something that the masses never learn, that your attention is your life, that where you direct your mental energy determines who you become, and that the ability to remain focused on what actually matters while resisting the constant pull of distractions is the fundamental difference between those who achieve their authentic potential and those who remain forever trapped in cycles of reaction and dissipation. The unshakable mind is not born. It is forged through the systematic practice of choosing strategic focus over immediate gratification, long-term development over short-term stimulation, authentic significance over the illusion of importance. It requires developing the mental discipline to say no to the majority of opportunities, temptations, and demands for attention in order to say yes wholeheartedly to the few objectives that will actually transform your capabilities and circumstances. This mental unshakability does not mean rigid inflexibility or stubborn resistance to all change. It means having such clear understanding of your authentic goals and genuine priorities that you can evaluate every worldly affair quickly and accurately, determining whether it serves your development or distracts from it, whether it advances your objectives or delays their achievement. The person who has developed this unshakable mind becomes immune to the psychological manipulation that controls the behavior of those who have never learned to guard their attention strategically. They cannot be lured into political arguments that serve no purpose except emotional stimulation. They cannot be manipulated through social pressure to participate in activities that waste their developmental resources. They cannot be distracted by entertainment that provides temporary pleasure while preventing long-term growth. You have now seen the complete architecture of mental enslavement disguised as worldly engagement, and you understand the choice that determines whether you will live as a master of your attention or as a slave to whatever forces can capture your mental energy most effectively. When the strong-minded person successfully resists the lure of worldly affairs, they gain access to something that distracted people never experience: the extraordinary power of sustained strategic focus directed toward objectives that actually matter. This focused attention creates capabilities and achievements that seem impossible to those whose mental energy remains scattered across multiple trivial concerns. Strategic focus operates according to what physicists call coherent energy principles. When energy waves align in the same direction, they amplify each other exponentially, rather than simply adding together. Mental energy works similarly. Scattered attention produces linear results, while focused attention produces exponential results that appear disproportionate to the effort invested. The strong-minded person, who can maintain strategic focus for extended periods, discovers that their problem-solving capabilities, creative insights, and productive output increase dramatically compared to when their attention was divided among multiple concerns. They enter what psychologists call flow states more frequently and maintain them for longer periods. This flow state access creates what researchers call compound learning effects. Each period of focused work builds upon previous periods, creating accelerating improvements in capability and results. The person who can focus intensively develops skills faster, solves problems more effectively, and produces higher quality work than those whose attention is constantly interrupted by worldly distractions. Strategic focus also enables what successful entrepreneurs call opportunity recognition, the ability to identify possibilities that others miss, because others are too distracted by immediate concerns to notice longer-term trends and emerging possibilities. The focused person can see patterns and connections that remain invisible to those whose attention is fragmented. This opportunity recognition often produces what appears to be extraordinary luck. The focused person seems to be in the right place at the right time with unusual frequency. But this luck actually results from their ability to maintain sustained attention on their domain of interest, enabling them to notice opportunities that distracted people overlook, despite having access to the same information. The focused person also develops what military strategists call strategic patience, the ability to pursue long-term objectives without being derailed by short-term distractions or setbacks. While others abandon goals when immediate results don't appear, or when more exciting opportunities seem to emerge, the strategically focused person maintains commitment to objectives they've determined are worth pursuing. This strategic patience enables the pursuit of goals that require extended development periods, mastery-level skills, significant wealth accumulation, complex relationship building, or major creative projects. The focused person can invest years of effort in developing capabilities or building assets, while others cycle through multiple superficial pursuits that produce no lasting value. Strategic focus creates what economists call competitive advantages through depth rather than breadth, the ability to become exceptional at specific valuable capabilities rather than remaining mediocre at many different activities. The focused person develops expertise that creates unique value and cannot be easily replicated by others who spread their efforts across multiple domains. This depth-based advantage often produces disproportionate rewards because markets pay premium prices for exceptional capability, while providing minimal rewards for average performance across multiple areas. The person who becomes world-class at one valuable skill typically earns more and enjoys more career satisfaction than those who remain competent at many different skills. The clarity that strategic focus provides also enables what successful people call effective decision-making, the ability to evaluate choices based on their alignment with authentic goals rather than their emotional appeal or social acceptability. The focused person can make difficult decisions quickly because they have clear criteria for what serves their objectives and what doesn't. This decision-making clarity eliminates the paralysis and regret that plague people who lack clear priorities. The focused person doesn't agonize over choices because they can quickly evaluate options against their strategic criteria. They don't second-guess their decisions because they made those decisions based on solid reasoning rather than emotional impulses or social pressure. Strategic focus also produces what could be called implementation velocity, the ability to move quickly from decision to action because mental energy isn't being consumed by competing priorities or distracting concerns. The focused person can commit fully to chosen activities because they're not simultaneously trying to maintain engagement with multiple other pursuits. This implementation velocity creates momentum that makes goal achievement more efficient and more likely. The focused person completes projects while others are still planning them, develops skills while others are still deciding what to learn, and builds relationships while others are still networking without purpose. Perhaps most importantly, strategic focus enables what philosophers call authentic self-expression, the development and manifestation of your genuine capabilities and interests, rather than the scattered pursuit of socially approved activities. The focused person discovers what they're truly capable of becoming when their energy is concentrated rather than dispersed. This authentic self-expression produces satisfaction and meaning that can never be achieved through participation in worldly affairs because it emerges from your own development rather than from external validation or social approval. The focused person doesn't need recognition from others because they can see their own progress clearly. They don't need entertainment from external sources because their work provides engagement. They don't need social drama because they're creating meaningful outcomes. The cumulative effect of sustained strategic focus is the development of what could be called unstoppable momentum, a kind of psychological and practical force that makes goal achievement increasingly inevitable rather than merely possible. The focused person doesn't just work toward their objectives, they become a focused force that naturally produces the results they're seeking. This unstoppable momentum is what separates extraordinary achievers from ordinary people who have similar talents and opportunities. The difference lies not in natural ability, but in the ability to maintain strategic focus despite the constant pull of worldly distractions that prevent most people from ever developing their full potential. These worldly affairs, the social dramas, the political outrage, the consumer temptations, the status competitions, the endless stream of information, opinion, and artificial urgency are not random distractions. They are systematic tools for ensuring that the potentially strong remain weak, that the naturally focused remain scattered, and that those who could develop genuine power waste their mental energy on pursuits that serve everyone's interests except their own. Tonight we explore the most crucial distinction between the strong-minded and the weak, the ability to remain unmoved by the constant pull of worldly affairs, to maintain laser focus on what actually matters, while others dissipate their potential, chasing whatever captures their attention in the moment. This is not about becoming a hermit or rejecting all worldly engagement. This is about developing the mental strength to choose your engagement strategically rather than being pulled into every drama, trend, or apparent crisis that demands your participation. It's about understanding that your attention is your most valuable resource, and that those who control where you direct that attention control your destiny. Over the next hour, we will examine how worldly affairs function as control mechanisms, why the weak-minded cannot resist their pull, and most importantly, how developing the strength to remain unlured by these distractions is the foundation of all genuine achievement and authentic power. By the end of this exploration, you will understand that the choice facing you is not whether to engage with the world, but whether you will choose your engagements based on strategic value or be chosen by whatever worldly affair demands your attention most loudly.